Okay guys, let's talk Foxbody problems in 2022. Aftermarket distributors. I haven't seen any of these that are any good. So I've actually fixed several cars with bad aftermarket distributors. As a matter of fact, one of my friends put one of these in his car and it bound up and busted the cam pin off the end of the cam as well as the camshaft bolt. Luckily the engine wasn't destroyed, but it did cause damage that he had to fix. As you can see, this one here that I'm holding in my hand, this thing's really new. Look at the inside, it's super clean, it looks like new. Even the outside looks really great, right? Check this out. This thing will not spin. It's bound up. It has no end play. It won't move at all. So if you're putting one of these in your car, be very careful. This could cause you a lot of grief. We also had one where the bearing wore in the housing and the car wouldn't run right. And that was because when the bearing wore in the housing of the distributor, the rotor actually dropped low enough that it was just barely firing on the electrode on the cap. As you can see here, I could just barely get that to turn. And so guys, this is why I keep an assortment of stock distributors around. In my experience, there's nothing better to run than a good working stock one. So guys, normally I wouldn't ask, what should we do with this thing? Normally I'd just fire this right into the scrap bin. Instead, I'm going to try and free it up and turn it into an oil pump drive shaft primer. Okay guys, I know this isn't a punch, but all I did for illustration purposes is take a punch, stick it in here. I had it in my vise and I just tapped the pin out. Pulley's off. Now it can be used as a drive shaft primer if it wasn't bound up by this collar. So I drove the pin out of this collar and now I got to see if I can free it up a little bit so I can get it to turn. So I thought that was a problem. The collar was maybe just bound up in here too tight. It's not. The distributor's actually still really tight. So when I usually make these oil pump drive shaft primers, I leave that collar on so it won't separate. So what I did was I sprayed some penetrating oil in here with the shaft, sprayed a little bit up top, and then I just worked it in. Now it's nice and free. So without that collar on that I took off, it will just slide right apart. So I always leave that collar on when I'm making an oil pump drive shaft primer. So I'll probably put that back on and then give this engine a prime. Okay guys, you can probably hear it when the oil got sucked up. The drill kind of slowed down. So I spun it for a while. You guys see me stop. I actually ran back, opened the door, looked at the odometer gauge, and the oil pressure was past 40. So I usually like to spin it for a while with the valve covers on. With the valve covers off, it's a lot easier to see. You can see the oil start to flow out of each rocker. And when all the rockers have oil coming out of them, you know you've got oil everywhere. So I'm just going to spin this up a bunch more before I attempt to start the car. So as I was saying, guys, I've never found an aftermarket distributor I like. There may be some out there. If you know of a good one, please let me know because I'd love to hear about it. As for this one, that's about the only good use I've found for it.